All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're going to break down the anatomy of a political attack. You know how an argument gets built piece by piece in the media. We're going to look at everything: the main accusation, the evidence they use, and of course, the counterattack that always follows. And we're basing all of this on one really powerful media segment. So, it all starts right here with this one quote. "These people are crazy. I'm telling you, they are crazy." Now, this isn't just some off-the-cuff remark. This is the whole argument in a nutshell. It's the central claim, the thesis, that everything else we're about to see is trying to prove. Okay, so here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll set the scene with a tale of two parties. Then, we'll get to the central accusation. After that, we'll look at the on-screen evidence, followed by the Democratic rebuttal. And we'll wrap it all up by asking, what's at stake? All right, first up, a tale of two parties. Let's set the scene. So the whole thing takes place during a big presidential address. But what's interesting here is that the focus isn't just on the person speaking. The story being told is really about the reaction of the opposition party. The narrative we're looking at creates this really stark contrast. You've got the president's words on one hand, and then the camera zooms in on Democrats, who are described as just sitting there, on their hands, scowling. That visual, that reaction, becomes a huge piece of the puzzle. Okay, now for part two. This central accusation. Let's really define the core argument here. And here it is, the Republican claim. The Democratic Party is described as a heartless, soulless, deranged, anti-American Democratic Party that's lost its way. Wow. I mean, the key thing to notice here is that this goes way beyond just disagreeing on policy, right? This is a direct shot at the party's entire character, its patriotism. Words like heartless and deranged, that's the foundation for the whole argument they're building. So if you're going to make an accusation that big, you need to back it up with some kind of proof. Let's move on to our third section, the on-screen evidence. How do they actually try to build this case? Well, the first thing they do is focus on what people didn't do. The argument centers on these specific moments when Democrats apparently refused to stand up and applaud. So the evidence here isn't an action, it's a non-action. And these moments are very carefully selected to build their case. And look at how specific this gets. The source says Democrats didn't stand for the mother of a daughter stabbed by an illegal immigrant, for a 5-year-old girl nearly killed in a car crash by an illegal alien, for the mother of a Ukrainian refugee stabbed by a career criminal, and apparently only about half stood for the U.S. men's gold medal hockey team. You see what's happening? It's not just a general "they didn't clap," it's a list of very specific, very emotionally charged examples. And the implication is pretty clear. If you don't stand for these people, well, that's proof that you're heartless, just like the main accusation said. And this is presented as a crucial moment. The president says the first duty of the American government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens. The argument being made is that this is a fundamental statement of principle. So when the opposition doesn't stand and applaud, that lack of reaction is shown as the ultimate proof of where their loyalties are, which directly feeds back into that central accusation. From there, the argument pivots. It moves from just observing who's standing or sitting to actual policy positions. They start connecting that alleged lack of empathy to concrete policy choices. So you see these further accusations pop up. Democrats support deadly sanctuary cities. They're blocking the removal of criminal aliens. And they refuse to ban gender transition for children against a parent's will. It's a shift from "look what they did" to "look what they believe." Of course, an attack like that isn't just left hanging in the air. That brings us to Section 4, the Democratic rebuttal. Let's see how the other side responds. And this table really lays it all out. You've got the Republican claim that the Democratic Party is crazy, deranged, and heartless. And what's the Democratic claim? That President Trump shows cult-like behavior and is in a state of delusion. You see how it's almost a mirror image? They aren't just disagreeing, they're matching the intensity of the language. Crazy and deranged gets met with cult-like and delusional. It's a total escalation. Let's look at the specifics from the source. You have Hakeem Jeffries, who calls it a cult, saying people regularly bend the knee to Donald Trump. Then there's Chuck Schumer, who calls Trump delusional and says he's offering no solutions. And finally, an unnamed congressman takes on the immigration point directly, calling the president's language thinly veiled racist language, anti-immigrant language. So you can see each one is pushing back on a different piece of the initial attack. Okay, so we've seen the attack, we've seen the counterattack, but what's the bigger picture here? Why does this matter? Let's get to our final section. What's at stake? And this is really the bottom line. The source material spells it out for us. It says this conflict is going to be a central theme in the upcoming midterm election campaigns. The narrator even says, I promise you, this will be in many campaign ads this midterm election year. So what we've been watching isn't just a random news segment. It's essentially a preview of a whole campaign strategy designed to get voters fired up.
So that leaves us with this final question to think about. When political opponents start describing each other as crazy or delusional, what does that really say about the state of the debate? When it stops being about policy and starts being about sanity or character, what does that mean for how we all talk about politics? It's definitely something to chew on.